Good morning, guys. You guys will be listening to this most likely on Monday, so it'll be the beginning to a new week for you all. We are starting day 6 of Esperanza Rising. If you will recall from our last reading, the ranch had burned. It had burned down, and the uncles were responsible for it. They had burned the ranch down in an attempt to try to get Mama to agree to marry the uncle. And Mama told them that she would consider it, but really that's part of a plot. She is talking with Miguel and his family about possibly going to America and doing farm work up there in order to survive. The name of this chapter was Figs. We haven't learned yet why it might be called Figs. We learned that Tio Luis followed through with his threat to Mama. And even worse, he told her that if she moved in with some of the servants into the servants' quarters, he basically threatened to just burn their houses down too. So now most of the people on the ranch, as well as anywhere they moved in Mexico, are afraid of the uncles, and therefore Mama would really have no protection if she stayed. Okay, so we are going to finish, I believe, this chapter today. Yes, we're going to finish it today. The next day, Abuelita's sisters came for her in a wagon. Remember, Abuelita broke her ankle in the fire, and her sisters are nuns that work in a convent. The nuns, dressed in their black and white habits, gently lifted Abuelita into the back. They pulled a blanket under her chin, and Esperanza went to her and held her hand. She remembered the night that Alfonso and Miguel brought Papa home in the wagon. How long ago was that? She knew that it had been only a few weeks, but it seemed like many lifetimes ago. Esperanza tenderly hugged and kissed Abuelita. Mi nieta, we won't be able to communicate. The mail is unpredictable, and I'm sure your uncles will be watching my correspondence. But I will come, of that you can be certain. While you are waiting, finish this for me. She handed Esperanza the bundle of crocheting. Look at the zigzag of the blanket. Mountains and valleys. Right now, you are at the bottom of the valley and your problems loom big around you. But soon, you will be at the top of the mountain again. After you have lived many mountains and valleys, we will be together. So she's talking about her crocheting, and she makes those zigzag patterns in her crocheting, and she's using that to explain to Esperanza that life is sort of like mountains and valleys. Sometimes you're having hard times and you're down in the valleys or in the bottom of the crocheting. Sometimes your life is great and you're in the top of the mountains. So she's using her crocheting to compare to Esperanza's life. Through her tears, Esperanza said, "Please get well. Please come to us. I promise, and you promise to take care of Mama for me." Next, it was Mama's turn. Esperanza could not watch. She buried her head in Hortensia's shoulder until she heard the wagon pulling away. Then she went to Mama and put her arms around her. They watched the wagon disappear down the path until it was a speck in the distance, until even the dust was gone. That's when Esperanza noticed the old trunk with the leather straps that the nun had left. "What's in the trunk?" she asked. "Our papers to travel, and clothes from the poor box at the convent." "The poor box?" "People donate them," said Mama, "for others who cannot afford to buy their own clothes." "Mama, at a time like this, must we worry about some poor family who needs clothes?" So Esperanza is thinking that Mama is trying to get clothes to donate to somebody else who is poor. "Esperanza," said Mama, "we have little money, and Hortensia, Alfonso, and Miguel are no longer our servants. We are indebted to them for our finances and our future. And that trunk of clothes for the poor, Esperanza, it is for us." Senor Rodriguez was the only person they could trust. He came after dark for secret meetings, always carrying a basket of figs for the grieving family to disguise his real reason for visiting. Esperanza fell asleep each night on a blanket on the floor, listening to the adults' hushed voices and mysterious plans, and smelling the plentiful piles of white figs that she knew would never be eaten. At the end of the week, Esperanza was sitting on the small step to Hortensia and Alfonso's cabin when Tio Luis rode up. He remained on his horse and sent Alfonso to bring Mama. In a few moments, Mama walked toward them, drying her hands on her apron. She held her head high and looked beautiful, and even dressed in the old clothes from the poor box. Luis, I have considered your proposal, and in the interest of the servants and Esperanza, I will marry you in due time. But you must begin replanting and rebuilding immediately, as the servants need their jobs. Esperanza was quiet and stared at the dirt, hiding the smirk on her face. This time she knows that Mama is not telling the truth, that she's just trying to appease Tio Luis until they can get away from there. Tio Luis could not contain his grin. He sat up straighter. I knew you would come to your senses, Ramona. I will announce the engagement at once. Mama nodded, almost bowing. One more thing, she said. We will need a wagon to visit Abuelita. She is at the convent in La Purísima. I must see to her every few weeks. I will send one over this afternoon, said Tio Luis, smiling. A new one. And those clothes, Ramona, they are not fitting for a woman of your stature. And Esperanza looks like a waif. I will send a dressmaker next week with new fabrics. In the nicest way possible, Esperanza looked up and said, Thank you, Tio Luis. I am happy that you will be taking care of us. Yes, of course, he said, not even glancing at her. Esperanza smiled at him anyway, because she knew she would never spend a night in the same house with him, and he would never be her stepfather. She almost wished she would be able to see his face when he realized that they had escaped. He wouldn't be grinning like a proud rooster then. The night before the dressmaker was scheduled to come, Mama woke Esperanza in the middle of the night, and they left with only what they could carry. Esperanza held a valise filled with clothes, a small package of tamales, and her doll from Papa. She and Mama and Hortensia were wrapped in dark shawls to blend in with the night. They could not take a chance of walking on the roads, so Miguel and Alfonso led them through the grape rows, weaving across Papa's land towards the Rodriguez ranch. There was enough moonlight so that they could see the outlines of the twisted and charred trunks, the burnt-out vines rolling in parallel lines toward the mountains. It looked as if someone had taken a gigantic comb, dipped it in black paint, and gently swirled it across a huge canvas. They reached the fig orchard that separated Papa's land from Senor Rodriguez's. Alfonso, Hortensia, and Miguel walked ahead, but Esperanza held back and pulled on Mama's hand to keep her there for a moment. They turned to look at what used to be El Rancho de las Rosas in the distance. Sadness and anger tangled in Esperanza's stomach as she thought of all she was leaving, her friends and her school, her life as it once was. Abuelita and Papa, she felt as though she were leaving him too. As if reading her mind, Mama said, Papa's heart will find us wherever we go. Then Mama took a determined breath and headed toward the sprawling trees. Esperanza followed, but hesitated every few steps looking back. She hated leaving, but how could she stay? With each stride, Papa's land became smaller and smaller. She hurried after Mama, knowing that she might never come back to her home again. And her heart filled with venom for Tio Luis. When she turned around one last time, she could see nothing behind her but a trail of spattered figs she had resentfully smashed beneath her feet. Okay. So after Mama brought out the box of clothes from the poor box from the convent, I wonder how Esperanza felt about being poor now. She had always kind of thought, not necessarily that she was better than everybody else, but she realized that she was wealthy, and she realized enough to know that she and Miguel are on different sides of the river of life. So now she's having to wear clothes out of the poor box that have been donated to poor people. So I wonder how Esperanza feels now about the poor, now that she is one of them. Um, I think it was probably a bitter pill for her to swallow. I think it was probably a feeling that she never thought she would feel. But here she is, and she probably realizes that there's really not any difference between poor people and rich people except the amount of money that they have. That really, people are people. They're the same regardless. So your challenge for today is to think about this. Senor Rodriguez, he is secretly helping them. He is sneaking over in the middle of the night, pretending to bring figs to the grieving family, when really he is sneaking over there to help make plans to help them escape under the cover of darkness in the night. He would be in big trouble if the uncles found out that he was helping. This is a big risk for him to help this family escape. So I want you to think about the United States and the times of slavery and what this scenario with Senor Rodriguez, what it reminds you of. What happened in the United States with slaves who needed to be hidden in the night to try to escape to freedom? Think about what that was, and do a little bit of research, because actually there are places here in Kentucky that that was part of this organization. So that's your challenge for today, and I'll be back tomorrow to read you guys again. Bye bye.